To me, for example, to hear from the Deputy Commissioner that emotional protection is one of the things that we need to consider, because that is not what you think about when you think about the services provided by her institution. But going back to what you have all touched on to some extent, the issue of abuse. What do we mean by abuse? What are the definitions that we are using? And why are our definitions not in step with a lot of what the international arena is talking about? May I start with Dr. Pottinger? When we say child abuse,
okay, well, typically the four main groupings for abuse would be physical, sexual, emotional, psychological neglect. Okay. Nicola mentioned that the norm, the cultural practice here and the norm is a slap or two. And I think it's even more than just a slap or two, it's a both, you know. And that is considered the norm. And many persons will say, but I had that when I was young and I have turned out well, so why are we now calling this abuse? And so there needs to be, and it has started. I don't by any means want to say we have not been working in the area. There needs to be a continuation of the public education to help persons understand what is physical, what is punitive, what is physical disciplining, what is abuse. And there are some fine lines and some grays, but we do need to promote that message very clearly. I think also, though, that in addition to helping the public understand the differences and the nuances between abuse and physical punishment, I think there also needs to be discussion on the reporting, because I think we've gotten the sexual abuse reporting down. I think there's improvement in that area, but I still think that there is a lot of hesitancy, and it's a laissez-faire response to reporting the physical abuse. So there also has to be that angle that we need to be focusing on in terms of educating the public. I don't know if
yes.
But
absolutely. Not a button. You're most welcome.
Sure. As a non-expert on these matters, my ways of thinking may be a little different from the experts. But let me raise a general concern that I have, which is perhaps more acute here now because I'm not acting as an expert. How do we make our words more powerful?
How do we make our words?
How do we, listening to you a while ago, that's the thought that crossed my mind. How do we make our words more powerful? In other words, more impactful on behavior. And we are calling out negative behaviors, and rightly so. But I think in this field of activity, people need to be perhaps become more aware of alternative forms of punishment, for example. Right? So we say don't hit, don't be physically abusive, and so forth. And then some parents may throw up their hands and say, so what do I do? Do I become a permissive parent? And they can foresee the harms associated with permissiveness. So we have to give them some ideas as to how to function more effectively.
And I quite agree with you.
And in that way make our words more powerful.
We have been running our violence prevention through domestic sexual gender-based violence workshops. We have had seminars with parents and children together. Just last summer, for example, I was talking about the very issue of abuse, verbal abuse, and I'm trying to get across to the parents and the youngsters in the room the impact that has. And a parent, you could see and hear the bewilderment when she said, but you're saying don't abuse? So if I don't curse, what do I do? So your point is very well taken. And prior to that, a youngster on the outside was spoken to by a sergeant, a female sergeant, who spoke. I wasn't there, but I suspect it was an authoritarian tone. And I had a civilian friend who intervened and said, in street language, you're not having a good day in Papa. And immediately he opened up. And he said, the one of them want to come show up their stress per man. Parents, teacher, police, all of them are treat man like prisoner.
Wow.
And out of that, it brings home the point that the words we use to tell parents, about the shortcomings is always reinforcing what they're doing wrong. We're never telling them that this is the way you can approach the conversation with your child. And when we approach the children to talk to them about their shortcomings, we're also reinforcing the negative without leaving them with an alternative. So in our training workshops, we run scenarios that shows up the negative behaviors and words and action, and then we run the scenarios about what would be the more appropriate responses. And out of that, because all these are participants really coming up with their own dialogue, and then they process what has gone on, and people come out feeling a lot more empowered. So part of the solution, I believe, in the public education is to get people in the process of unpacking their own ideas and behaviors and seeking to find alternatives, especially when you can find the kind of facilitators that can help them to do that.
Absolutely. Dr. Pottinger, and then in response. Yes.
Because I do agree with that. I find that an effective training program is offering that.
Yes.
Effectively, and we do a lot of that.
Yes.
It is offering where we show what the negative is and we do promote the positive. However, the majority of the public out there are not coming in to the effective training program. So we also need to identify other ways. And I think the media plays a very important role. There have been some commercials on TV I've been seeing of late, which I think we can use that sort of media to promote what should be done, how it can be an alternative way rather than saying don't beat, this is how, etc. Using
this is what you can do.
Exactly. Little scripts, etc. And I think that's a very good way to get it out on air, radio, and on TV.
The same scripts of the workshops.
Exactly.
And they're very powerful.
Yeah.
Ms. Satchel.
So I was just adding to that because in one of the courses I teach, we talk about this. And one of the concerns that the students have is, so if we don't eat and if we are just positive and we're doing positive reinforcement, then the children are going to be spoiled. And what we'll have is difficulty disciplining, and then that will pose a problem in the society. So there's not this belief that if it is that I tell you what you have done wrong, I explain to you the consequences of that. I take away the PlayStation, I take away those other things. That is not effective enough, given the nature of our societies, given the nature that we're living in a very high violence society. That's the reality of it, that this is seen as soft. This is seen
But
as
where do we make the change?
But
where do we
change
make
it.
the
We'll
change?
have to
Yes.
slowly change it. So even though it might not be seen as an ideal, we need to start breaking down those thoughts and those beliefs.
I agree.
I find that, interestingly, it's not just in families, but in our children's homes, because of the banning of proper punishment. You find that the staff are, in some regards, and so we have found that we do training in alternates to corporal punishment, which we find very helpful. At the CDA, we have what we call the Children and Family Support Units, where we do the parenting training, but we also do counseling for the children and the family. And in the summer, we run a camp for them as well, to teach them how the alternative.
Teach them alternatives. Okay.
Way of treating it.
And our audience is right with us. One of the questions just posed by Twitter: some adults are resistant to acknowledging children's rights as they feel the child will take advantage of them as a parent. I wanted to just put in historical perspective the point that in the not too far past, it was completely appropriate and accepted for a lot more adult to adult physical interaction. It was felt that slave owners had the absolute right to physically punish their slaves. In other cultures, servants felt the beat of their masters. Tradesmen had the complete right to physically beat their apprentices. And husbands had a right to beat their wives. And it was not questioned by society. It was thought this is the way to keep discipline. Now, all of those are no longer accepted. There are still men who beat women, we know this, and in fact, women who beat men. But that is not an accepted thing, and there are laws, and it is frowned upon. Beating children is the last of these points. It is the last historical one where we say, you have to beat the child for the child to learn and to understand what is punishment and what they've done wrong and so on. But with the changes that have happened across the centuries and decades, this is the last one that also needs change. Another point that has been brought out on Twitter, should beating children be brought back in schools as a means of modifying behavior in our youth? Any comments?
No, I don't support that. We have so many instances of meetings gone wrong in school. For what?
Yeah.
And danger posed to teachers by family members of students. For
Yes.
sometimes some very simple things
Yes.
that had nothing to do with corporal punishment is very real. The reality of it, though, is that we have too many times we have segmented the responsibility for children almost as if it is on a continuum rather than an integrated process where parents and community and school are supposed to be working together for the welfare and the education and development and so on of a child, because we are responsible for preparing that child to take an adult place and role in society. And so it is a holistic approach. What we need to be exploring is how to get that parent, child, and teacher relationship working a lot better, and to find the supporting groups, mechanisms, or whatever you want to call it, within the wider society to assist when we deem that there is a challenge with a
problem. I completely
To add to
agree.
that, though, I think that's especially in the school system and probably our system as well. There's something of assessment and screening of the children to see what exactly is
going on.
the problems. And so you say the child is done, so you go and beat him into learning, which maybe the child has a learning disability that needs to be addressed. So because you're not doing, so a child is disrupted in class, they are sent outside, and the other class sent out two more, and then they form a group out there, which is
A group.
which is not conducive, and so you have children being sent home, and that allows them to form groups, gangs, which is delinquent, become delinquent because of this. So I think that we have to go back to the point where we need to screen our children to determine their learning.
We need a lot more effort in that.
Yes, and I support that point because I know of some cases where I think I've spoken to when the mother is not recalled about it, because a child, a 3-year-old child was stabbed up by another boy who was probably about 10 or so. But I found it very unusual. I said, children are usually very loving to us babies. The long and short of it is that when I forced the police to keep going back and digging and probing, they found out that the child had a learning disability. We were doing our amateur diagnosis that he sounded autistic, and he was a lot more responsive to touch than any other form of stimulus. But when he tried to touch people in the community, they pushed him away, labeled him, and so he was even more isolated and disconnected emotionally. This little boy that he stabbed up was the apple of everybody's eyes and get all the attention, the loving and so on. And I think that it's probably out of that why he responded that way. And it led us to start to think about some of our youth offenders who got in conflict with the law, whether or not they started out along the same path, and how they came to that. And so one of the work that I am attempting to do is to sensitize our staff to be aware of these issues, and while we are not expert, always question what you see. Don't take it on it's not as black and white as it may appear, and to get the help that we need.
I just want to add
I was
to
going to
that.
invite you.
No, I want to add to that because I think a good place to start is the premise that children are not born bad.
Yes.
And so when you see them acting out, there is something going on. You know, many parents have tried to convince me this is what let's spot and the blah 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 that gets inherited.
All the genetics,
You can't
yes.
inherit a behavioral gene like stealing or lying or anything to that effect. You know? So they're not born bad. So when they're acting out, there is something that we need to try and understand what is precipitating that. I also just want to quickly say that I'm glad to hear that the correctional officers, and I have seen it in practice, are being a lot more sensitized. The teachers also need to be, and they have been, and just to continue on that, because I find that assessing all children is a dream we will not be able to attain. It's expensive business, I'm sorry, but it's not going to be attainable. But if we are able to sensitize teachers, and if they fall out of school and correctional services, correctional officers, to what are some of the red flags, that we refer those for the assessment. So we can't assess all. It's just not going to be possible. But we do need to start with the training, the teacher training colleges, in terms of, and they are doing it. I keep saying that we need to recognize and acknowledge that some work is being done. So the training colleges are doing it, but it's a little bit more, because paradigm shifts for the teachers are very important. They also are brought up in our society where the